My name is Molly Ruland. I am excited for our episode today, although I'm always excited for episodes of the Lower Third podcast because our goal is to introduce you to people who are resilient and unstoppable and making the best of life no matter what pandemic comes down the line. Today, I am excited to introduce you to Maurice Philogene, who is a friend of mine, an inspiration of mine. The dude has done a lot of really incredible things that we're going to tap into. Anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maurice Philogene. How you doing today?
I am good, Molly. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's really nice to see your face, man, for sure.
Good to
What
see
a
you.
crazy time we are in.
Yeah,
I want to really, just take a moment to, really sing some praises for you. I've always been really impressed with just how much you've accomplished in your life, and you've done so many things concurrently. You've been, uh, working for global firms, working in the military, working in the police. Like, I can't even keep up with all the things that you've done, honestly. But you've done such an amazing job of all of that, in addition to, helping so many people, in addition to traveling so much. And I've never fully understood how you've been able to pack all of that into one life.
yeah.
And it seems like you're far from done. And so I just think it's a real honor for my listeners to kind of meet you today and kind of get a taste of your mindset and what that really is and how that works for you. So you want to give maybe a little bit of your origin story to the listeners?
Yeah. So I am honored. Thank you for letting me come on the lower third. I'm very appreciative of that. The origin story, as if it's a movie or something. But so I come from a immigrant family, right? My family's from Haiti. My brother and I were first generation born here in the States. I was born in New York, raised in Boston. So I grew up in Boston. I claim Boston, if you will.
Nice.
Stayed there from 6 to 18, and then came down to University of Virginia in the area, and then I've been kind of based here ever since. I think what you're talking about is like on the professional side. I have always worked for a global consulting firm, so it's 23 years as an executive there, doing strategy and IT consulting kind of across the world. I think I did it in 10 countries so far.
Wow.
I've always been in the military. So what you were asking, I was always in the Air Force Reserves, but did
Hmm.
the equivalent of 8 years of active duty with being mobilized after 9/11. So I had 4 mobilizations and a bunch of TDYs, but all said and done, probably about 8 years of full-time service
Wow.
as a federal agent in the Air Force and under Department of Defense. Real estate kicked in 2002. So when I was in my early 20s, so I've been a real estate investor, buying single family properties for 14 years, got my financial freedom, which we can talk about for sure. Um, and then I flipped to large apartment buildings and mobile home parks in 2015. So I have that going on. Restaurant owner, passively, but own a couple of restaurants in the District of Columbia. And then in 2008, because I wanted to give back to local community, I became a street cop in the DC area, and I'm still patrolling a couple nights a week. It is my way of giving back to local community, so I love doing that. And then this beautiful map behind me, which I need to look at now because I'm trying to head out of the country. I've always had this passion of travel and immersing myself in different cultures. So my stat there, and it's not intended to be a stat, but we can quantify it. I've been to 96 countries at least 2 weeks of meaningful time, like working, living, or somehow meaningfully connecting with people, maybe like a volunteer effort at a refugee camp or something like that. Um, yeah, and I keep going back overseas. So all that one way or another in my 44 years of life, I've kind of wrapped it into this ball and it just works.
I mean, it's really impressive. You're like Superman for real, like you're like, in the suit one moment and in a uniform the next moment. Like I don't even understand, and people are like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. There's a lot going on. And then, when I feel that way, I just think I was like, what would Maurice be doing right now? He'd be working 3 jobs. That's what he would be doing,
Yeah.
and buying apartment buildings and, it's pretty intense for sure. I just don't even understand how you can do it all, to be honest. So, now that are you still doing the global consulting, or are you focused more on the policing and the investing and the traveling?
Man, I I am starting to shift a little bit now, right? The consulting has always been there, so I'm very grateful because that company has always been my kind of stability since I got out of college. You know what I mean? So I don't do it on a global basis anymore. I focus on federal government clients here in DC. But with everything going on COVID, everything is remote. But
Right.
things have started to shift. I kind of see the horizon now on the corporate career because I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and the person that I work for and with, I respect her so much that if I'm providing her value, I'm good. But I don't intend on moving on to a different account or anything like that.
Right.
But where my life has landed is 100% on the entrepreneurial track. Like that takes up most of my time, working with my partners to buy apartment buildings and mobile home parks and things of that nature. And all of it, as you know, because I never want to preface anything that I say with like, oh, number of apartments or this is how much money it is. No, it was never about that. It was always about like the financial freedom aspects and controlling your time. And, here I am just about to be 45 next week. And, there's not one person outside of my mother and father and the good Lord who can tell me what to do at any particular time now. So all that stuff was to gain my financial freedom and my time wealth, which is really important to me.
So how big is your team with the investment side? Like how many people work for you to manage all these all these projects? It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of work.
So now, this just happened a year ago, and this goes kind of to the mindset thing. Um, I had been doing real estate since 2002 on my own up until about 2017 or so,
Mm,
which got very, very lonely, to be honest, because while everybody was kicking it and headed out for the weekends pre-COVID to clubs and bars and all that type of stuff, I was dealing with tenants and termites and toilets and all that crap. But I
totally.
was willing to do it because I had a goal, you know what I mean?
Right.
Um, but it just so happens that I got connected to three primary partners that I have now on the apartment side. We did one deal together and then realized that my strengths were their weaknesses and their strengths were my weaknesses. And we could do a lot more together, faster, bigger, stronger, better, all that type of stuff. So we formalized ourselves. There's actually 5 of us now, but the company is called Quattro Capital. Um, and to your point, like employees know, but we have property managers that we hire who, as soon as you acquire a building, then you'll get a property manager to operate that building. So my job is not to operate the buildings. My job is to manage the manager, if you will.
Right.
So we
Right.
have tons of property managers that take care of that stuff for us.
So up until 2017, all those investment projects, that was all by yourself?
Everything, every last bit of it.
Jeez Louise, man.
And I would, you know what, Molly, I was asked that question the other day. I would never go back and change it ever because it molded me. Like between the cop stuff and the federal agent stuff and the military stuff and investment stuff, doing it on my own and making mistakes and losing a lot of money when I made mistakes, but also making a lot of money when I had some successes.
Right.
Like I just wouldn't be who I am now. But to get to the goals that I want now, there's no way I'll accomplish it on my own. And people got to realize that you are as good. You know how it is. The average of the 5 people around you and stuff.
Right.
Goodness, since January, we've closed on 5 buildings. We have 2 under contract and like 3 in the pipeline since January.
It's amazing.
I can't do that I don't have time. There's no way I could do that on my own, but you find the right people to partner with and you go faster, better, faster, farther.
Now, is that pretty common? Because I was talking to Jerome Myers about some of his projects, and he has different partners and different investors based on different projects. But you're like a group that just tackles these projects together consistently.
So here's the model. We do. I am not like most investors, and I'm not competing against other investors or whatever. We're just creating. And the
Mhm.
way we look at it is the 4 or 5 of us, we're all very life-minded people.
Mm.
You know how I am, Molly. Like there's no way I'm gonna let work define my life or define who I am. I'm gonna get on a plane and travel and immerse and whatever and do work on the side here and there. All of them are trying to achieve life-related goals. And then all of them, including myself, recognize that someone put a hand down on the ladder and pulled us up.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do the exact same thing for other people and pull people up. So we will kind of circle around an individual. Let's say that there is a new investor who has the chops to do what we're doing. We'll sponsor them, we'll train them, we'll split all the fees that we get for pulling deals together with that person. We will only work with people that we think can be family. I have been pulled into deals before where there's like 30 people involved, and you can see right from the jump that everybody is all about the money. Money, money,
Right.
money, 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 money. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
If you are not life focused or thinking about what that revenue can do for your family or for society or even just better your life, as opposed to how many zeros can you stuff into your bank account, which is what I think a lot of people do, I won't work with you. That's why I've resonated with these folks so much. They have names: Aaron, Chad, Kim, and Tammy. Um, we're sticking together, and it's not a mistake or a happenstance that we're growing this fast, because there's just so much good juju,
Yeah.
and we're finding people who we want to align with and find more properties. So they will go out, like we'll find our own properties for sure, but our partner Amy and our partner Christy, they have found great properties in Indiana and Georgia and Alabama, and we're working towards getting those. So we uplift them, right? And then they
Right.
become part of the family circle, and then we keep moving, and that's how we're acquiring.
That's amazing. I love that there's women on the team. That's awesome. I like to hear that.
It's more women than men. What I
Good.
got to do
That's
is get more minorities involved, which
well.
seems to be harder, but it's more women than men.
Well, that's why you're doing so well. Let's keep it 100.
Yeah.
Anytime there's more women involved, things seem to be better. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, is there a lot of diversity in the real estate financing or investing world?
I heard a stat the other day that 87% of people who are in commercial real estate as an investor are white men.
I mean,
I have to validate the stat,
right.
but I haven't seen a lot of people like me or Jerome Myers, who you met, doing what we are doing. That's why, when I'm posting on social media or something like that, I tend to get a lot of attention. Well, one, because what does the corporate America doing talking about real estate and lifestyle design and stuff like that? But two, there's just not a lot of brothers doing what I'm doing. And I'd like to pull as many brown skin, red skin, yellow skin, women, everything. It should just be way more diverse. But no, I don't see a lot of myself.
What do you think the barrier is for that? Is it like the initial investment? Is it knowledge? Is it access? Is it all of the above?
Goals and maybe society shielding what you could be, right? Like everything is about commercialism, what car you have, and then people get stuck in that race where they got to go to work to pay for their things, and they don't realize that there's a better way of living. If you can generate enough passive income to cover your expenses, and then on top of that, additional passive income to cover your life and what you want to do, you can get that done. But what we tend to do is chase the objects, chase the titles, chase the followers, right? For some reason in my 20s, I was very adamant about finding freedom, whatever freedom was at the time. And somehow I found passive income, and then realized that I could create a salary. And then I found the travel stuff and realized that there's more world for me to find. So because I have those values, going after investments and going balls to the wall on real estate is very, very easy, because there's a purpose to it. It's not just money. You know what I'm saying? But I wonder if people are kind of stuck in the matrix mindset of, well, I got to climb the corporate ladder because that's what everybody does and all that type of stuff. There's just better ways of doing things.
Well, there's a lot of like what I should be doing. And then, a huge part of it is if you don't see people who look like you doing those things, you don't think it's possible. I mean, there's psychology behind it. There's data and studies to show that this is true, which is why, I'm always like, yo, start a podcast. Like, you know what I mean? It's really important for people to see that inspiration, understand that it is possible. As people of color or women or whatever, right? Like anytime you're excluded, it just doesn't feel like it's in reach. Even if you're not necessarily specifically being excluded, it might feel that way.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think that it's a societal trap, right? It's just like keep going, get a job, and then everything just gets more and more expensive every year. And you're just like working harder and harder, but you're not making any progress.
No.
and you're just like, I'm exhausted. I worked 70 hours this week and I still don't own a house. I still don't. Yeah, I feel very fortunate because, I got in the real estate finance business when I was 19, and I started as in a very diverse group with a bunch of Persians over at First International Mortgage in Tyson's Corner. I was the diversity hire in that group, and I was started as a receptionist, and I just started asking questions to the loan guys, the reps from the mortgage companies that were coming in to push their programs. And what's a verification of deposit? And I started asking questions. I was like, well, let me see that loan. I think it would work. And, they were closing 5 to 6 deals a month. And I went in, I closed 18 loans in there. Every single loan that was in that building, my first full month as a processor. And I just truly enjoyed it.
It was worth it.
I did. I like problem solving. I'm just a natural. If you put a problem in front of me, I'm going to solve it, which is why I end up in bad relationships all the time. But that's a whole other podcast. We won't even go there. Yeah. I'm like, how can I fix you? And so, yeah, that's, I'm in therapy now, so it's okay. But,
there you go.
but I bought a house at 23 because I was getting other people mortgages, and I got myself one, and I got my friends mortgages, and I was definitely exposed to how all of that works. I sold it, and 3 years later, I made $100,000, and I moved to Cali. Yeah, and people were like, everybody was like, "We knew you could do it." And I was like, "No bullshit," because I remember, this is a funny story. So the first year, I'm 23 years old, I buy a house, and the heat stops working. So I call a couple different people over, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you need to replace all your pipes." Like, I don't know what that has to do with heat, but like, it was like being a woman and going to the mechanic. They were like, "Where's your husband? Where's your boyfriend?" And they were like, "Oh, it's going to be $100,000. I was like, "Yeah, get out of my house, man." And so, I thought I didn't have the money to fix it. And there was this big brick fireplace in the living room. It was on Shellhorn Road in Alexandria. And so I pushed my bed up against the brick, hearth, and I got wood. I like went and bought wood or stole wood or whatever. And I literally like heated the house that entire winter by firewood. I was living on the Oregon Trail in that Mickey Flicky, let me tell you. It got so bad that like everything started to look like firewood. You know what I mean? Like, I'd look at the coffee table and be like, I think that would burn. You know what I mean? Like, when you're cold, man, you're like, throw that shit in the fire. Yeah. And so, and then, spring's coming along. I meet some people. One of them works for like Michael and Son. He's like, let me see your heat. And he's like, dude, your thermostat's broken. And so I remember that first year better than anybody else in my life. So when I sold it, and they were like, "Oh, we knew," and I was like, "No. I froze my ass off. I'm lucky I didn't burst the pipes in that house. Like, you weren't there. You weren't supportive, but now you're supportive because I pulled it off." And after that, I never wanted to buy another house again. To be honest, I was like, I'm good with fixing the hot water heater and the downspouts and all. I just want to live. And then I hit a point where I was like, I only want to buy something that I can make money off of. So it has to be like mixed use, commercial. Like, the idea of just buying a house just to live in it, I'm like, what? That's just crazy. But it was because I saw it being done, and I saw how those programs worked, and I like was able to get myself that deal. And it was invaluable experience in the mortgage business because I learned that anything is possible.
But you got lucky, and I don't think so. Back to your point of why other people don't get into, not just into the real estate business, but why other people don't get into business for themselves or find ways to generate revenue. We're not taught that.
No.
There's not, I mean, at least when I was growing up, I think it's getting a little bit better now, but there's not like personal finance education in school, right? No. I don't need to learn, like, give me the cursory American history and then start working with me on personal finance and how to generate revenue. If we were taught you get your 100 grand or whatever, right? And you take that 100 grand and you you use it to create additional income. We're just not taught how to make money grow at all.
Totally.
And that, my friend, is the secret of the wealthy and the secret of the rich, is that they focus on making money grow one way or the other,
For sure. Because that was the missing piece of that transaction. It's like, I knew how to get the house. I got the house. I maintained it. I sold it, by myself. I literally put a for sale by owner sign in the front yard, sold it myself, wrote the contracts because, I mean, I've been reading contracts and doing closings for, a lot of years. So it came natural to me. and I made that money and I paid off a bunch of debt, moved to Cali. But then I just spent that money on rent, and then I was broke again a year later or whatever. I mean, 100 grand, sounds like a lot of money until it's not.
Until
Uh,
it's not, and it goes
and
away
and
very
and I
quickly.
exactly, and I didn't
Right.
invest it into anything else like it should have been rolled into the next investment. But yeah, you're not taught those things, especially as a woman. No one's like, hey, you should go out there. Like my whole life, my mom, I love her, don't get me wrong, but she's like, you're so loud, you're so bossy. And I'm like, no, mom, I'm a natural leader, and people can understand me. Like these are never qualities that were encouraged in my life. And
Right.
definitely was not supported. Everybody in my family thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
Um, you
Yeah.
know, and I think of it as like how much money I saved my parents on a college education. I feel like they should be really grateful for that, but it's not really how that works out. So,
No, it's not what we're taught to do.
no, not at all. So tell me, these new deals that you have going on, this is really impressive to have this happening during a pandemic. Did you see any like drop off in your business or like loss of tenants, right? You must have a lot of tenants under your
Uh,
umbrella.
you know, um, only in one place, Atlanta. I got hurt pretty bad in a building that I have in Atlanta because it's workforce housing. The Black community is hit by COVID,
The
you know,
hardest.
just as hard as any other community out there. And I would say one half of the building was impacted by COVID, whether losing their jobs or got sick or something like that. But in general, no, I haven't had too much of an issue. I will tell you, for property owners, especially the conscious capitalists like myself, like I understand that I need to make money and I have investors and all that type of stuff, but I want to help people with their living conditions, what have you. It's a little bit of a hard one because everyone is getting all these stimulus loans or what have you if they lose their jobs, and then there's also eviction moratoriums. Well,
Mm,
God bless Atlanta, and I understand why they're doing it, but the eviction moratorium is through August the 31st. Well, we have to come up with the money
the note.
to pay the note, and it does hurt. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't find ways to like work with the tenancy, but when the government imposes something like that, where tenants some tenants can abuse it and not pay rent for 6 months, but other tenants actually need it. But it still puts the property owner in a position where it's like, how am I going to figure out how to pay this note? And then you call the bank, and the bank's like, well, that's why you have reserves. Well, the reserves are only going to go so far. No one predicted a pandemic.
No.
That's just not how it works. So, but I would say in general we're doing okay. But the one thing that I learned, like I read a book called it was written by Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game. In that book, he interviewed a lot of incredible financial minds, and one of the people that he interviewed was Sir John Templeton. And I think it was an old Templeton Funds. There used to be a old kind of like Vanguard, but Templeton had funds or whatever. And Templeton used to say, "When there's blood in the streets, that's when there's opportunity."
Mm,
That has stuck with me because usually when the market goes like south, people run for the hills and take all their money out and all that stuff. So anytime that there's a pandemic or a crisis or whatever, I'm actually out looking for opportunities because people who didn't plan well or don't operate well or didn't have reserves or whatever, um, they start selling, to be
mm-hmm.
honest. And that puts me in a position to be able to take care of 100 more families. So my team has done really well. And I mentioned to you, we have a couple places on a contract. I'm getting on a plane this afternoon to go to Tennessee to close on 3 buildings, but due diligence on 2 additional buildings. So I cannot complain. But I never want anyone to like hear these things like, oh, it's very easy. No, this is like 20 years of figuring out my place in the entrepreneurial space, what my brand was going to be, how to operate, who to pair with. And now I'm starting to reap the benefits of all that work that I put in on my own for years and years and years.
How do you feel about, because like I personally feel they should put like a moratorium on rent and mortgage payments. Like if they could just put everything on pause for 3 months and then just add it to the back end of everything, like then that wouldn't hurt the investors. Is that a realistic thing to even consider?
No, because everything is tied together, unfortunately. So when the tenant pays a property owner, then the property owner pays the bank, then the bank actually has investors. If one piece of that cycle falls, just like 2008 when the mortgage collapse happened, It's not that the whole chain broke apart, but
Right.
the government propped it up. The government paid all the bills of the banks, and which is crazy to me, but the government
Right.
paid all the bills. So there's just this whole connected cycle of what happens with a dollar, you know?
But what
Um,
but what about like, because spending 13 years in real estate finance, right? Like I was always just completely befuddled by front loaded interest. Like I've just never
yeah.
understood how that could be legal. Like I mean, for real, like how is that? That's like mafia money right there, as
It
far as I'm
is,
concerned.
listen, the banks are the biggest gangsters in the world.
So like
The
they
banks
should
are,
be the break in the chain, not the property owners, not the tenants in them, but the guys making front loaded interest every month. I mean, you know, I don't know, man. Like, when the market collapsed, I saw it all coming, right? The writing was on the
yeah,
wall. The program guidelines started to change. People were getting really squirrely. And I mean, I saw so much fraud in that industry. I was just like,
yeah,
I'm out. Like, I was like, I'd
yeah.
rather flip burgers at McDonald's and have more integrity and knowing that
Mhm.
I'm helping people, although that's not real because you're killing people with McDonald's. But you know what I'm saying? Like, at least I knew what I was doing. And I got out because I just saw so much fraud. So and it was inside of communities. It was like white people taking advantage of white people and Spanish people taking. I mean, it was just like it wasn't even like one sided. It was like across the board.
Yeah.
And I just like I hit a point where I had to get out because the founder of Freddie Mac like hung himself in his house right before the market crashed the last time. I mean, you got to wonder like what secrets did he take with him and like where are those banks right
Killing
now,
people.
right? Like
They're killing people.
what is really right? Like the fact that he could and his family was in the house, like you can't, you just got to wonder like what is that, right? And so I wonder like how much longer can this pandemic go on before like we get to that?
I don't know, but this is where I'm talking to you about the financial education piece that people should pay attention to it. When we buy a home, you know this. I mean, I think that's why you were talking about it. The concept of buying a $400,000 home in the 50s, like nobody put that, the society didn't put that forward. The banks put that forward. The banks put that forward because they wanted people to use their mortgage products. Because if you borrowed $400,000 from a bank on a 30-year mortgage, you ended up paying $700,000 for that
Yeah,
house. It
maybe
is a
more.
total scam. It's a
Yeah.
total scam. So even in my house, and I have a very humble home, I rented my house for 7 years. And I was only forced to buy it when the landlord was like, look, I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I'm going to sell this thing. And I was trying to get them to keep it and all that stuff. I don't believe in owning my own home. I believe in owning homes that I rent to other people because it generates revenue and I can do good in the world out there. I think most people should rent because what the banks are doing is, I'm not going to call it stealing. I mean, they are giving you a mechanism by which you can buy a box with 4 walls on it. But the amount of interest that we pay if you keep onto that thing, oh, it's only 3%. Yeah, but it's 3% compounding, and you're not paying the principal at the beginning of the loan at
No,
all.
you're
So
not
people
touching it.
think, oh, I own my home. No, you don't. You don't own your home. The bank owns your home,
Right.
and you are paying them for the right to stay in that home, right?
Exactly. And it's temporary. And United States is
Very temporary.
the only country that you could default on your last three payments and they will foreclose that
They'll
joint and
take
not
it.
give you a penny back. Like that's beyond, immoral as far as
That,
I'm concerned.
that's what it is, Mom. So when that whole span 2002 to 2015 that I was talking about, when I did all that single family stuff,
Yeah.
the way that I got through to that freedom level, if you will, was I paid off all the mortgages.
Right.
I went to work on the corporate side. I went to work on the military side. I went to work on the police side. I paid off the first place that I owned, right? Let's say 100 grand on a condo or something like that. And then that tenant was paying 1,500 bucks a month. So instead of wasting that 1,500 bucks a month, I took that money, added it to my regular paychecks. I paid off the second one. I wasn't going to let the bank scam me and get as much interest out of me as they could. So I paid them all off.
Right.
Um, there's ways to use those products to benefit people. I feel like I'm doing that as an investor, like I'm giving people affordable housing. There's a mobile home park that I own up in Pennsylvania. It sits in the middle of $1 to $2 million estates. It's like 17 acres in the middle of these magnificent estates. These people have nowhere to go. The
Right.
lot rent is 400 bucks. They're all fixed income on Social Security or retired veterans like myself, or piecing together money from 2 or 3 part-time jobs. If we don't buy this thing and a developer gets his hands on it, he's going to plow the thing down and build luxury townhomes, and these folks will have nowhere to go. So yes, I have a loan on that, but I'm doing good for the community. So in my opinion, that's the right way to leverage a loan. But all this other stuff that goes on, people, like, I'm harping on people to get financially educated. What is
Yeah.
happening to your money? You
Yeah.
have to understand it.
Yeah, like I have a couple friends who have houses and they like or condos and they rent them out and they're like, "Well, I'm trying to have them pay this much rent so it covers my mortgage payment. If not, I'm losing money." And I'm like, "You're not losing money." And they're like, "No, I'd be losing 300 a month." I'm like, "You're not losing money. Like they're still paying your mortgage."
Yeah.
So like at the end of the year, you will have paid 3 grand, but your mortgage will be 10 grand lower. Like that's not a loss in money. And like I've almost like argued with them because I'm like, it's not a lot. And they don't like it's just
I don't get it.
it's like how do you even own multiple properties and you like don't like fully understand this transaction, like because if you can rent it for 10 years and it costs you $300 a month, like now you own a property for
Yeah.
$300 a month, right? And
Yeah.
that's where like people need to think, but they just don't, they really
No.
don't.
And what I tell people when they ask me about like renting versus owning, especially young professionals, I say, look, if you're gonna rent an apartment for $1,800 a month, right? Let's say all utilities are included, just for sake of conversation. Well, you have a fixed expense. You know exactly what you are responsible for on a monthly basis. Now, let's say you have an argument and you're like, well, Maurice, I can buy this house for 250 grand and my mortgage is going to be $1,800 a month. It's the same. Well, no, it's not the same, because your mortgage is $1,800 a month. Your real estate taxes are $5,000 for the year. Now you need a new roof. Now you got to replace your appliances. Now your
Right.
floor is leaking. Now your light fixtures are out, and it just compounds. People are like, well, I would rather use that money to, invest in my house. And what I'm saying is keep the $1,800 fixed expense from an apartment for now. And the rest of the money that you would have spent on all the crap, the house, the appliance, the repairs, and all that,
Right.
invest it.
Invest it.
Invest it. Anyways, I don't want to get on my soapbox about that, but
No.
I'm so passionate about people's financial education and helping people figure out how to make their money grow, because we weren't taught that. Us city
No.
kids, inner city kids, we ain't taught that. Uh, just most people are not taught that. The 1%, the 2%
Right.
figure that out, and that's why their net worth keeps going up. It's not because people are bad people. It's because they learn the rules.
Right.
There's rules to this game,
There's
and
rules to the game.
fortunately I've learned a few of those rules and I'm benefiting from it, but I want other people to learn those things too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what about owner financing? Have you thought about, I remember what I was going to say. It's not just like inner city kids, right? It's not even like a racial divide, although there is in financial literacy, but
Mhm.
there's also a generational thing. Like my
100%.
parents didn't talk to me about that because that was an inappropriate conversation to have with your child. It was this weird baby boomer mentality where
Yeah.
it's like, that's none of your business, that's none of your concern, like I'm not going to talk to you about this. So
Yeah.
it's really messed up in a lot of different neighborhoods, you know what I
It's
mean?
hard, and I have an immigrant family. Most immigrant families, it's education. Like, get your education, and I'm cool with
Right.
that. My parents gave me wonderful foundation. I was never unprivileged because I had unprivileged. Is that a word? I was
It
never
isn't.
not privileged. I had my parents.
Right.
I had
Yeah.
a solid household, even though we didn't have anything. But they said, get your education. And once I turned 18, they were like, dude, we have no money. You're gonna have to go out and figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Like, I called them asking for money. I'll never forget driving back from combat training when I was 21. When I graduated from university, drove down to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, went to ground combat school to become a military police commander. Graduated on October 3rd, 1997. Had to be in D.C. on October 20th, 1997. I had $100 and some odd dollars in my pocket and a 1990 Ford Probe GT, and that was it. And I was waiting 2 weeks to get a paycheck.
Oh
So I
man.
borrowed $100 from my military buddy, got up to DC, had nowhere to live, slept in the car for 2 nights, called my boy who I graduated from college with. He convinced his mother to let me stay in the basement. And every time I got a paycheck from that consulting firm, I would like, all right, I got a check. I'm going to buy another shirt. All right, I got another check. Now I'm going to buy a different color belt. And it was just like this slow roll. But we didn't have it, and no one's teaching that stuff. But
No.
we have to self-teach. Like,
Yeah.
there's too many resources now. It's unacceptable. There's podcasts, there's books, there's the internet, there's seminars,
YouTube.
there's everything,
Right.
everything. So, I don't know. It's an important topic.
Have you ever thought about doing any owner financing yourself, acting as a mortgage company?
Acting as the bank. I have not yet. Let me get to my. I guess I'm going to get to my goals that I've set for myself, and then hopefully I can get in a position where I can finance people's dreams and businesses and things of that nature. For now, the way that I quote unquote finance people is I help them go do their own deal, and I will
Right.
sponsor them to go get a loan. Because in the commercial space, to get a loan to do like an apartment, 100-unit apartment building, you have to have the net worth equal to the apartment building amount. So if the apartment building is 8 million, you have to have a net worth of 8 million. You have to have the experience, and then you have to have liquidity. And the liquidity is equal to 8 to 10 months of the mortgage payment, but sitting
In
in a
the
bank
bank.
account somewhere.
Right.
But I can be your sponsor. Like if you want to go buy the building, I can go get the loan for you as a sponsor, and then you would give me a cut of the building for being your sponsor.
Sweet. Let's go buy a building, Maurice. What are we doing?
Oh, we
You
can.
heard it here, folks.
We can. But good topic. But again, all that stuff is for lifestyle related reasons, and I always want to caveat that because I'm not a money guy. I'm a lifestyle guy.
For sure. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like that would be a great way to like roll those funds into something else, right? It's like along the same lines of, using some of that front loaded interest, but maybe doing it in a more fair way. That's one thing that I really loved about being in real estate finance is I was doing all subprime lending. And so it
Yeah.
was all like self-employed borrowers or like I'm the first person in my family to ever own a house. Like I love that challenge of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I really I miss it sometimes. I don't miss the industry, but I
Yep.
miss like getting impossible shit done. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved understanding everything. And like, I would go to all the settlements and I would just like take over from the title agent. I'd be like, I got this. Like, so this is what this form means. Sign here. This is what this form means. Sign here. And people just intuitively trusted me because they knew that I genuinely cared. Right. And
That you
so
cared about it. Yeah.
yeah. And I
I
always
get it.
thought, if I was ever in that position, like doing owner financing, or lease to own type situations,
Yeah.
seemed like a good idea to help kind of buoy some other people's financial ships.
But
But
I'll reverse that for 1 second. Like that mobile home park I was telling you about in Pennsylvania, the owner is a 80-year-old guy. He built it in the 70s. So he has a vested interest in the residents there. He owned it outright. So he did owner financing for us. So he is my bank.
which is
And not
that's
only
where
did
it's
he do
at.
owner financing, he gave me 3% interest only, period. Right? Like,
Wow.
which is insane,
That's
which is insane.
yeah.
But because he knew, because we talked to him when we built a relationship with him, he knew that we were going to take care of these residents for decades. So he was willing to buy into that. And what he needed for his wife and himself was peace of mind. So every month he gets a check for whatever, 10 to 20 grand a month.
Right.
And that's his cash flow. And we're slowly paying off this balance that we owe him, and everybody wins. Like
Right.
that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a transaction where like you're helping people, but you're helping the seller, but the buyer benefits. So now my family benefits, and I hope that my kids take over that thing one day. And so owner financing can be a very powerful tool.
Yeah, that's what I always
Cut the
thought it
banks out.
as. Instead of what'd you say?
You cut the banks out.
Well, first and foremost, but and
Yeah,
not to become the bank and become the bad people we were just referencing, but more to like, strengthen communities financially by having
yeah,
that security and having that ownership there.
yeah.
Because it can go a long way. Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I did not realize that you were encouraging people to rent and not buy. But I mean, I couldn't agree more. I just feel like on HGTV, there's like two twin brothers that do like the home remodeling or whatever, whatever. But
Too
they have
much
a new
money.
show. I
Yeah,
know I hate that channel. I'm like, oh, it drives me
yeah,
insane for all the reasons we just talked about. And they like destroy
yeah.
perfectly good homes and cabinets just to like replace them with new. I
It's
fucking hate that show,
no,
honestly. But these two guys, they have this new show called The Forever Home. And they go to people's houses who want to move and they go, no, 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 let's just add a room. Like, what are you missing? And then they like remodel the house and like make it like retool it. And then the people stay. And I'm
and then they
like,
feel fresh. It feels fresh to them, and they like it.
and that's where we need to be, because especially like this idea of like, oh, just sell it 2 years later. You just lost so much money on closing costs, on down payment, on interest. If you're going to leave that house in less than 5 years, it
Yeah,
makes absolutely no financial sense to buy a house. Like
No.
you
Well,
will,
but what are the banks pushing? I keep going back to the banks. But what are the banks pushing? Hey, get a home equity line of credit, remodel your house, spend another 150 grand. Like, make
right,
it the best place. I'm not suggesting don't invest in your quality of life. That's not what I'm saying.
right,
What I'm
right,
saying is invest your money such that your investments pay you, and then you can invest in your quality of life. So it's
right.
only now that I'm considering getting a new car after 18 years of not having a new car. I'm still driving my '05 Infinity, which I don't think I'll get rid of it. Right? I still live in a humble home, and I'm just now thinking about doing a little bit because I redid the basement because it was just crap. But the money that I had 10 years ago, I could have done that, but then I would have never had the money to go invest and create,
Right.
create, right? Remember what I said? I don't compete, I create. I wanted to create a lifestyle by which now I can afford the things that I could not and should not have been buying back in the day. The notion that 20 somethings right now are like in their homes and then getting a home equity line of credit to remodel the home because they want to keep up with the Joneses down the street is so bad. It's so bad.
It's
I
insane.
see it all the time, and it hurts me a little bit because folks just don't have the education. Anyways, so I am trying to do my best to educate people and put out content, as you know, and talk about lifestyle design and I don't know, just better ways of living than wasting your money like that.
Have you ever thought about like actually teaching this stuff, like doing conferences or doing like are you doing any one-on-one coaching?
I'm headed there.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not getting paid for it. I'm
Well,
not getting paid for it, but listen, I mentor probably like 10 people, 10, 15 people right now, like unofficially, helping them reduce their debt, helping people buy their first multifamily, whether it's just a 5 unit. I'm helping, there's a married couple right now that they are buying a 57 unit in Texas. We're
nice.
helping them. Like, I don't know, you just help people. At some point, I do want to formalize the education that I have and try and like get it out. Uh, this week, not this weekend, next weekend, July 31st, I'm speaking at the Mid Atlantic Multifamily Conference with Jerome.
With Jerome, yeah.
But my topic is not how do you buy all this real estate. I just listen. Real estate is a means to live your life better. It is not about real estate for me. What I'm talking about is financial freedom that comes through passive income and how you can travel hack, how you can free your time, how you can be more mobile as a person so you can enjoy your life better. It just so happens that I use real estate as the venue to create time because I create passive income, which means I don't have to physically be anywhere. So I have my Tim I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss. I got to meet that guy one day.
I know,
Um,
man. Seriously.
I stole his formula, freedom equals time plus mobility, from that book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And it has been a game changer because I started to realize, why am I going after a title when what I need to be going after is how to create time and then how to be mobile. So I don't get my mail anywhere. It's all digitized. I don't buy a lot of crap. I don't do a lot of activities that I cannot pull myself out of, right? Because
Mm,
I want my mobility. So if like me and the family right now, we're literally just talking about, because of what's going on with COVID, renting an RV for maybe a month and a half, because my little one, is not going
right.
to be in school.
Right.
So we're going to rent an RV and we're just going to bounce.
Take
But I
them on
can
the
do my
road.
whole business from the road because I don't I don't physically receive anything. I do everything online. So it's, yes, so I'll be speaking at that conference, but it'll be more on the how I created financial freedom and like time wealth to
Yeah.
go travel to those 96 countries and have fun the way I have fun.
Awesome. Well, I know we're definitely gonna sign you up as a mentor for the Content for Change Creator Academy.
Yeah,
And I actually have some really exciting stuff to share with you. We got the donation from Gary. We got like a whole bunch of laptops donated. I can't remember, like 100 laptops or something, or 50
Gary
laptops.
V. I gotta put it up there, Gary V.
Yeah, not through Gary V, but through somebody else.
Well, the donation from Gary V.
But the donation came through from Gary
That was
V.
great of him. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "Come on, Gary, come through,"
I
and he
watched
did.
that.
I
I
was
was like,
like, right." And we're actually going to. It's kind of exciting. What we're going to do is build courses for the mentors. So we're going to like isolate the first 5 mentors and turn all your knowledge into a course that we'll put on the Creator Academy. And that way, you
oh,
learn how to
really?
do that, and we cover all the expenses of it, but it just lives on there. But I think you would be a great person for that first one. And then I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, but I would love to help you create some like learning modules for this stuff. And like not just about the podcast, but beyond that, like
Yeah,
static information. So we'll talk about all that offline. But like the more we're
sure.
talking, I'm like, I should have thought of this sooner, honestly. This is a no-brainer. Because I think it's really important. You know, representation matters and seeing people succeed matters. And I think you just
Yeah.
have a crazy story, right? Like I said, anytime I feel busy, I'm like, yeah, well, what is Maurice doing right now? He's probably doing a million things, you know? Because
I'm still doing
it
it.
really is impressive that and you never really sound super stressed out and you're not like, oh, I'm so tired or I'm so busy. Like you're just super humble about all that. And I really respect it because I'm sure there's times when you're just like so fucking stressed you can't even see straight, but you just
I have my moments. Trust me,
yeah,
I definitely have my moments. But you know what I think, Molly? It's like, how blessed are we? You
right.
know, in comparison to the rest of the world. So if I have all these opportunities to do all these amazing things, I'm gonna do them. I am starting to slow down a little bit. Like I don't know how much longer I'm still gonna
Right.
patrol, and get into fights with people and all that type of stuff. But um, no, but I still love like helping people in the middle of the night. So it's hard for me to let it go.
Well,
Um,
we need like I mean, you know, I'm you know not the friendliest to police officers as I'm sure you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
not one to one, but just in general, I think there's a lot of broken things. But we
Yeah,
need good cops. Like we you're the only light in that tunnel. You know what I mean? Like we need good they can't you know otherwise they are all bad. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So like it's
yeah.
really important that you're there. But I can only imagine that that's a real drain for a lot of different reasons and not you know it's unsafe. I mean, it's a whole other conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, but you know what? It's unsafe, Molly. But then you get a call and there's a burglar in someone's house, and you go in and you catch a burglar in someone's house, and they have a gun on them, and you pull them out, and then the family is like crying and they thank you, and you know their kids never even woke up while you were in the house, you know, and you've
Right,
done something good for a family, and then you go home at 6:30 in the morning, and you're like, that'll never be on the news. I don't need it to be on the news. I feel
right.
good about what I did last night. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go do it again. So that's why I'm like, yeah, maybe maybe I'm not
Yeah.
gonna give it up for a while. But
I
um,
mean, that's what policing is supposed to be, right? Like that's what it's there for. Like that's
yeah,
the idea, right? So it's important that that's upheld as well. You know, it's difficult time for sure.
for sure.
So you're headed to where next?
Lebanon.
Man. One of these days I'm gonna be able to travel with you, man. I'm gonna be like, I'm going, you know. I'm getting closer. You know, that Tim Ferriss 4 Hour Work Week changed my life. I mean, I was just like, I had so many aha moments, and that book was 10 years old when I wrote it. I was
Yeah,
like, how have I not? And then it's crazy talking to people about what I've learned from that book, and so many people are in the dark. And I'm like, man, that's great. It just shows you that the information is out there, right?
yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people had been impacted by that book for 10 years before I even heard about it, you know? And then I got my hands on it,
And
and
they're
look at
quiet
me,
about it. They're not
you
gonna
know?
say anything about it. And let me say one thing about that. In that book, 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, there is a concept called NR, the new rich.
Yeah.
I am an NR person. NR means folks who are not necessarily millionaires and billionaires, but they have found a way to have experiences and time wealth the way that people assume that millionaires and billionaires have. In fact, most billionaires are miserable because they're
Right.
tending to businesses and all that time until they retire or whatever. Um, you can create small streams of income from doing what Tim calls muses or side hustles or businesses or whatever. Don't buy a lot of crap. Don't buy a lot. Uh, don't encumber yourself with monthly payments on things that you don't need to. Have more time available. And whether it's traveling the world or learning Portuguese or doing karate or whatever it is that makes you happy, go do that and immerse yourself in that particular activity for a certain period of time. So now when I go over to Lebanon, and this is like my fourth time to Lebanon since November,
What?
for real, yeah.
I knew
I'll
you went to
stay over.
one time. I didn't know.
This is number 4 or 5. I've lost track. I've lost track now. I can't even remember. But I've made a ton of friends over there. But when I go over there, I'm staying for 3 weeks or so because a friend of mine owns a winery there, and I kind of want to immerse in his business and understand it. And not that I'm going to be a partner in a winery, but I'm just fascinated by how he started this business because he grew up from nothing as well, right? It's the concept of the new rich. People think you have to have $1 million. That's not true. You
Mm-mm.
just have to have time wealth and enough income that covers your expenses and then a little bit more. And then you can use tools and tactics like travel hacking. I have
Hmm.
not paid for a plane ticket in, I don't, 2 years maybe, because everything that I do is from points.
Right.
And I've just figured it out how to funnel my business or funnel my personal life through cards such that I can get tickets. So when I go next week, in that case, I was fortunate to get a business class ticket, but sometimes I'll fly coach. But I'm paying $11 to get over there, just the taxes. I'm staying with a friend. My friend is letting me use her car. Uh, the, oh, it must be incredibly expensive to get over to the Mediterranean region and live like that. No, no. But everybody thinks it is because they don't go out and study the resources such that you know how to do it. And instead of traveling like a tourist, like
Right.
have some empathy, meet people, connect, make friends, be interested in their business the way that I'm suggesting to you that I'm interested in my boy's business. Like learn. And then
Yeah.
people invite you back. And then now you've got, all these great friends in the world. So I really encourage people to like pick up 4 Hour Work Week and learn about this concept called the new rich and
Yeah.
see if there's a way you can do it.
Yeah. I mean, it changed my life. And then, was trying to figure out, okay, how do I flip to remote when I'm ready to go to Costa Rica? Then the pandemic
Yeah,
hit and I flipped to remote and I'm like, sweet, I'm on the fast track now. I'm proving that I can run my business successfully. In fact, better. My business has doubled since the pandemic because we're able to do more with less
double down.
studio time and my expenses have significantly dropped. 7K a month less in overhead. And that all adds up, right? And now, living at the beach and, making the best of
My
this
God.
pandemic.
Yep.
I mean, I stay inside. I, look out this lovely view all day. Don't get me wrong. And when people, early in the morning, I'm out there on my walk, my 2.5 mile walk. And then at night, when everybody goes back inside, I do another walk.
I don't
And
want to get my finger right
it is what it is. But I couldn't agree more about traveling. So I don't know if you know this about me. I don't know if we've talked to this about this or not. But in the early 2000s, I was uh, a hotel analyst. But so
What?
basically, I was a secret shopper, but for hotels, resorts, and casinos. And so I traveled all over the United States and the Caribbean to go rate these hotels. So, like, we worked for the government of Puerto Rico. We did every hotel in Parador twice a year. We had the Lowe's Hotels contract. We also had
Mm,
the Ameristar casinos, which are like, in the middle of nowhere. Like they're like, Mississippi riverboat casinos. Like, you know what I mean? There's none in Vegas. Like there's not a
yeah.
single Ameristar in Vegas. And quite often I had aliases because at Lowe's hotels, they were always trying to find you. So you couldn't check into multiples because there are systems connected. And they'd be like, that's the spotter.
Oh, this person was just here, was just there, was just there.
Why is she like Lowe's hotels hopping? And so
Uh,
I would go to New York and I would get fake IDs, from like whatever, those guys with the gold nugget jewelry, you know what I mean? I pick out the
yeah, yeah.
license I wanted, I get my fake ID, and then I would get authorized user credit cards. So, like one of my fake names was Dallas Mahoney, which is, I know, I know. If you're gonna make
That's
up
a
your
good
own
real
name,
name though.
and people are like, "That's an interesting name." I'm like, "I know." I used to always joke that me and my siblings were all named after the cities we were conceived in, and it was like I
Oh,
ran with that. It was fun.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but it was a wonderful thing because prior to that, like I had gone to college for 6 months and my roommate never showed up. And so I never went to my classes. I never went to the cafeteria. I lost like 30 pounds in like a few months because I was embarrassed to eat alone. I mean, grew up in I grew up in Falls Church, but like, I had the same classmates my whole life. You know what I mean? Like very small high school, very small elementary school. And then here I'm at George Mason. I don't know anybody. And I was painfully shy, like if you can believe that. And then I know. And then I got this job and I
Yeah,
was alone, and I was alone in Costa Rica or, Puerto Rico or Aruba or the Dominican Republic or Jackpot, Nevada, right? And home of genetic reshuffling, as I like to call it. But,
yeah,
you spend a lot of time alone and I would have to do bar evaluations and restaurant evaluations. So like, the bar, I'd have to see how long before the bartender came over and like how soon he offered me a second drink. Like there's standards for
Oh
everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
I had to time everything, but it forced me, I had to go eat alone. And like the first time it was so uncomfortable, you know, and like to sit at a bar alone. I mean, I'll never forget. It was like the most uncomfortable feeling of my life, you know? And meanwhile, I was at this like gay Puerto Rican hotel and there was like drag queens everywhere. Like I couldn't have been in a more welcoming, comfortable place, but I was just so awkward. But by the end of that job, I learned so much. There's so much value in traveling alone because
Yeah,
you know, if
yeah,
you're sitting at a bar in the Caribbean at 10 a.m., like whoever's sitting next to you has a story to tell, man.
absolutely,
Talk to them. And this is before
absolutely.
everybody had their, you know,
Yep,
heads in their phones all the
yep.
time.
Connect.
And it changed me as a person. And now I'll go anywhere alone because I'm gonna meet people. And
Of
I
course.
meet people in line. I meet people at traffic stops. Like I meet people everywhere I go. For real. People are like, "How do you know?" I'm like, I don't know, man, you know? And I love that. Like I love that. And had I not traveled alone and had I not been willing to go see what the world was, like I would have never gotten those skill sets. Like I just don't think so. And so
Yeah, it definitely made me a better person. And you met my
yeah,
brother Spellman until I
yeah,
met him about a year ago, and you know, he and I travel all the time together. Like all that stuff that I was doing was solo,
yeah,
you know, and I would just meet people everywhere I went, and you know, it's a good thing. But you know, all the business stuff drives that stuff. Like that stuff is the spice of life for me personally. I have aspirations to base out of the Mediterranean at some point in the very near future. I will always have a connection to DC, but I've been here long enough. It's time to figure out a way to shake it up. Like, or I'm willing to like split time between different places. You know,
yeah.
but travel's been a good thing for me.
Well, I can be your traveling podcast producer slash course builder.
Okay, we can do that anytime.
I mean, hey, well, you know, I'm looking at buying some land in Costa Rica real soon and just kind of getting something going there. So I have a
I got a
place.
guy. I
Yeah.
got a guy.
Oh, snap. Okay. Well, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah,
Because I got a guy who's a builder and we just bought a Sprinter van, one of those brand new 4-wheel drive diesel joints.
with the with the RV thing on the back.
No, like it's just like a Sprinter van, but it's fucking huge and you have to like climb up in it like it's an 18-wheeler and it's
Oh,
like on huge tires and it's a little bit lifted. It's 4-wheel drive and it's diesel. It's like
okay.
60K, but Sprinter has a 5-year 0% interest offer right now.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's something you can leverage. Yeah.
So you know, he's finishing up some work in Northern Virginia. He's flipped a few properties and then, you know, he's driving to Cali to get certified in solar. So we know how to convert solar anything,
Um,
whether it's a conversion van or a container home or whatever. And then once he's all set up, we'll buy some land and then he's going to drive to Costa Rica and start building. But my goal is to, and he's Venezuelan, he's brown, he speaks Spanish, he'll be all right. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I don't think I
yeah.
would want to drive to Costa Rica, but like whatever.
It's a long way to go.
I'll hide in the back with his tools if that's what it takes. But yeah, man, you know, that's the move. But I want to be able to move around. I want to, you know, be in Costa Rica sometimes, but travel. And that's really the goal is to own
You can do
something
this
there.
anywhere.
It, and that's what I'm proving right now. So as tough as the pandemic has been for a lot of other
A lot of people.
personal
Yeah,
reasons,
that's
like
hurt a lot of people.
I'm still really grateful because it's just showing me that, like, you know, all the changes I've made and all the business decisions I've made, you know, a lot of which were impacted by the 4-hour work week. You know, I mean, I have like 6 staff members right now, and that's because of the 4-hour work week.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I learned a lot, so I'm excited to continue that journey and learn more and be around more people because I think the greatest gift this pandemic has given us is the gift of self reflection.
100%. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that people are going to be a lot more intentional with how they spend their time and how they spend their money. And I, for one, have already been on that tip, but I am even more so on it now. And I'm determined to live a better life, right? Because, you know, all of a sudden I'm 44. And I mean, your birthday's coming up next week, you know, so is that Leo?
I'm a Leo. Yeah,
I know it. That's why we get
yeah.
along. But, you know, when did that shit happen, right? Like 44, 45. Like
Already
I'm
here.
like, what? Who's
And
that old?
do not. I'm saying this to you and to folks who listen. Like, do not use the excuse, "Oh, I'm gonna wait till I retire at 65" or some bullshit. You are young. You are healthy. You are good looking. You have a little bit of money in your pocket above your expenses. There you go. You can live the life of the new rich, right? You can
Right.
live the life of your dreams now and not put it off. we've been taught to put it off
until we
It's
can't even
crazy,
do it.
right? Or work your ass off and then you take 2 weeks of vacation annually. That's not a life.
Mm-mm.
Fine, like you can take leaves of absences, like save your money, take a leave of absence for 2 months and do something. It doesn't have to be travel. You can go learn a language or learn how to salsa dance or whatever. Take periods off from this crazy matrix thing that we do, and take the red pill. I took the red pill long time ago.
I took the red pill in the 90s at a bunch of raves, but that's a whole other story.
For sure.
I mean, right on. Well, this has been as usual, this has been an amazing conversation, man. It's nice to see your face and it's nice to catch up with you, and congratulations on the new deals, man. That's super impressive.
Thank you.
And now I know that if I ever find myself without a place to live, I know exactly who I'm calling. Just FYI. But yeah, man. Well, and keep me in tune with your schedule because I'm not too far from Tennessee, man. I'm not, maybe you come visit. We'll record a course or something, right? We can.
That's not a bad idea. Now that I know where you are, and
yeah, man.
Listen, if anybody of your circle or network or whatever, or the folks listening want to talk financial freedom or passive income or lifestyle design and how I figured certain things out or bounce stuff off or why I never cared about chasing titles in the corporate space and how it benefited me, that I didn't do that, where I have people who are, let's say, partners now who call and like, please help me. I love talking about that stuff. So whether they connect on LinkedIn or Instagram, like I'm always taking time to talk to people because we can help each other. I can learn, you can learn. But last thing, like I vibe so much on a frequency level of helping people move towards whatever that new rich space is for them. That's why I take the time to talk to folks and just wanted to put it out there. So I'll talk to anybody about anything.
Oh, that's what I love about you, man. I appreciate that for sure. We'll put all the links and everything are in the description for people who are checking out this podcast, like wherever they are watching it or listening to it. So it'll all be there and they can connect with you directly. And, thank you again for taking the time, man. It's been a really nice conversation. So thank you.
My pleasure. It's
good
to see you.
Yeah, for sure. And so thank you all for tuning in to the lower third. This has been a great episode. I love talking about real estate. I always love talking with Maurice about pretty much anything, but this was especially a great conversation. If you find this content valuable or interesting or hilarious, please consider sharing this on LinkedIn and tagging both me and Maurice in the post so that we can engage with you and comment back and everything else. That's the best thing that you could do to further this message. So thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.